Our next guest certainly lets no moss grow under his feet. In addition to holding multiple degrees and certifications, Dr. Wynn H Tran is completing a fellowship in rheumatology in Southern California. To keep himself from getting bored, he also supervises a free medical clinic in Detroit and oversees VietMD, a charitable education organization for Vietnamese physicians and patients. Wynn, it's a real pleasure to welcome you back to Michigan and feel like you belong.
Thank you very much, Alan. It's my pleasure.
So, first of all, how was the flight in?
Well, it was a red flight. I'm sure you know that. So it's a little bit difficult, but I'm here. It's where I feel belong to.
And you've been hopping back and forth between Michigan and California how many times now the past while?
Yes, multiple times. Partially because we have a free clinic here in Michigan, but also because my family is here. I like to come back to visit as much as I can.
So how many months left in your rheumatology fellowship?
It's about a year from now, yes.
Okay. So a few more red-eye flights.
A few more, yes.
Good. So I want to go back in time and talk about your family was living in Vietnam, and your dad was a former military officer.
Yes.
Yeah. And what happened after in 1975?
So after the fall of Saigon, my father was sent to, they call re-education camp, as you see.
A euphemism for prison.
For a number of years, and then after that he's remained mostly unemployed. Even though he's a highly skilled worker, he's fluent in French and English. And also he was, as you know, he's a former officer in South Vietnam armies, but remained unemployed, basically.
And so why, you came here not until 1999. There are several waves of people leaving Vietnam. Why so long before your family got out?
Yes. One of the main reasons because we lost all of the documentation that my father, when he was in the armies. In fact, he worked for Delta Force. It is a highly classified mission from the U.S. Army in Mekong River. Because of that, after the Vietnam War, he had to destroy all of the documentations. I'm sure you know that if people figure out that you work for this, it's likely that they will be executed.
Yeah.
Therefore, we don't have anything. We applied for refugee status in early 80s, but rejected because we did not have any.
So you were just a
documents.
baby in the
Yes.
80s?
I was just a baby, yes.
Okay. So you had your high school education in Vietnam and even training to be an architect.
That's right. When I came to the U.S., I was a senior student in architecture school in Vietnam. And when I came here, I restart over again, but still want to become an architect.
So talk about that transition. So you came from a very tropical climate to the northern U.S.
Yes.
So physically the transition was difficult. Talk about the cultural transition. Were people kind to you? Were they welcoming, or was it a bit alienating at first?
We came to Zealand, no, actually Holland first, and then later Zealand. The initial impression was a little bit strange, but very quickly we can feel that this is such a warm welcome from everyone. In fact, very lucky we have a church in Holland, a Beechwood Church, and sponsor our family. The day that we came here at night, they all came to the airport.
Late at night came to the airport to welcome you.
Yes. And immediately I feel like, wow, this is where family is. In fact, for the past 17 years, that's how I still feel.
And your family still lives in West Michigan today?
Yes.
Yeah.
My mom, she's still there, and everyone's still there. Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. So talk about your training, because today you're a physician with, as I said earlier, multiple certifications. But what about this kid who wanted to be an architect? How did that work?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I did not know that I would become a doctor someday. when we first arrived to the US at night, and then just a couple hours later, my father had a chest pain. We called 911. We have very little English, almost zero. We just hang up on the phone, and the ambulance came, and here we are the next day. The first day ever, first morning ever, was Holland Hospital. And
welcome to the U.S. medical system.
That's right. That's how I learned. As a refugee, if you came to the hospital without any language skill, that's how difficult it would be. But also, I feel like this is how the doctor, nurses treat you, regardless. Okay, no money, no insurance, no language, and that's how they treat you. And I do appreciate that.
So it made a really good impression on you.
They did.
So what were the early struggles for you when you were, because you're 20 years old, hadn't studied English before?
That's right. English was one of the major struggling. Obviously, if you like to learn about the culture, if you like to learn about anything in a newer country, language would be the first one.
Sure.
But after that, I think food would be my second one. I love Vietnamese food, and up until now, in California, I still love it. But can you imagine if you eat Vietnamese food for 20 years, and then you switch to McDonald's or Burger King, and then switch between?
Yeah, understand.
Yes.
So you eventually went to, after some community college training, you went to the University of Michigan.
Yes. And
completed your architecture training and worked for a while as an architect.
Yes.
When did you get the bug to say, no, I want to go back and study medicine?
Well, it's actually just a long process to make a final decision to become a doctor. As I said, after the Holland Hospital welcomed my father, I came back and volunteered there occasionally. Okay. And then in between, I also volunteered to become a medical interpreter.
Oh, fantastic.
And in between architect, the firm that I work here, AMGG Architects, we also design a clinic. So that's give me more exposure to U.S. healthcare.
So whether you knew it or not, medicine had many avenues into your mind and your soul.
That's right. And it's probably destiny too, like you see. And that's how I believe. I mean, opportunity, destiny will come, but it's up to us. Pick it up and work for it.
Awesome. So now you finished medical school. You're a licensed physician. You're upgrading your skills and getting additional training. But you're not stopping there. You have started this program, VietMD. Talk about this. From what I could see from the website, it looks like a marvelous organization. What does that do?
Well, VietMD is a non-profit medical organization dedicated to Vietnamese physicians and patients all over the world. We have members in Vietnam, Japan, and of course in the US. The main purpose of VietMD is via education. We believe we can help doctors learn better, and in return, they can serve a patient better.
Now, are these mostly doctors who are in Vietnam or also Vietnamese doctors in the United States?
Both.
Okay.
And for this year, so we have some very interesting program we exchanging. So we send doctors from the US to Vietnam, and also we try to get some doctors from Vietnam to the US. But also in between, we train them distantly. Like we have some internet training medical English, where doctors and students in Vietnam, they can learn medical knowledge here in the US.
And I noticed a lot of your coursework is online.
That's right.
So it's in the evening here, in the morning there.
Yes.
And you're doing that
Yes.
training.
Yes. I'm sure you know medical English is the door that you like to go further in your career if you are a doctor in Asia. So medical English helps Vietnamese doctors not only improve their knowledge, but also they can travel, and most importantly, they become a better provider, because the knowledge they learn up to date, in return, will help them take better care of their patients.
Sure. On the flip side of that, how does your education work for Vietnamese patients?
Well, the Vietnamese patient here in the U.S., we have a free clinic in Detroit, and we like to see if we can make represent this model to other states. Many Vietnamese here, they have a language barrier, which I was in this situation 17 years ago. And obviously, if you cannot communicate with your doctor, you cannot tell what's wrong. The idea here is we try to educate patients not only to break down the language barrier, but also to take care of themselves. Many of them rely on traditional medicines, and they take things from internet, from Facebook, and many of them can be harmful. So this is our goal, to educate. And I say, we believe education is the key for both doctor and patient, and that is the sole purpose of VietMD.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about the clinic in Detroit.
Well, the clinic in Detroit is staffed usually by one doctor, and we have one pharmacist, and we also have a nurse, and we ask for volunteer from locals. We have patients mainly from the church, but also extended from the community. We are under federal government. We are one of the few clinics that belong to the National Free Clinic Network. So our physicians and nurses, of course, have malpractice liability covered from now President Trump, previously President Obama.
Okay. So how do you get, I noticed on your website, I was looking at all of your staff, they're all Vietnamese healthcare professionals. How do you get these people to sign on to do pro bono work?
That's right. As you know, this is a volunteer work. Like nobody, all people get paid 99 cents a year. By law, we have to do that. But I think deep inside, everyone likes to do something. And once you reach to certain level, you can always give back. I strongly believe you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to finish your degree to give back. You can give back today as anything, a student, high school student, anything. Some
of the healthcare professionals on your website, I think, are medical students or pharmacy students.
Yes. Wynn H Tran, she's actually a vice president of VietMD, and she's finishing her PharmD very soon. But she involved with VietMD when she was a student, and she would be continue. And just like Dr. Long told, he's also a pharmacist. He's also a program director of one of the pharmacy residency program. So the bottom line is, if they like to give back, they can give at any time, right? You don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be a professional, as long as you have your heart and you like to do something.
My experience that for immigrants and refugees, one surprising aspect of American culture is that Americans do volunteer a lot.
That's right.
Is really part of our national culture to go outside and and volunteer.
Yes.
So clearly you've picked up on that.
I am.
That as well.
And that's why I consider myself as Vietnamese Americans, and that's how I am.
So talk a little bit about that, because it's often a conversation about, you know, how one can be a hyphenated American. You know, talk about that concept of identity.
We are a newer group of immigrants come to the U.S. Obviously, there's about 2 million Vietnamese Americans in the U.S. But you see that a lot of us come after 75, and we initially struggling because of the Vietnam War, because of poverty, but now we reach to the level of establishing. Many of us become successful businessmen, doctors, lawyers, you name it. Just like any other Asians. I do believe Vietnamese refugee, just like anyone else, one of the hardest working I ever seen. I saw a story that parents, they work 3 jobs, the first generation, so they can put their kid to school. And then, on top of that, they send money back to Vietnam for their extended family.
So working hard, saving hard, and still being generous.
And become they get American dream, and that's what it is.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. We just have a minute left on the program, but I want to wrap up with your impression on the notion of belonging. The show is called Feel Like You Belong. What creates belonging in your mind?
Belonging means where family is, where you feel most comfortable. And to me, here, Michigan, where my family is, my culture is, like you mentioned here, where I found my identity, Vietnamese Americans, and that's where I'm belonging to. Just one side, I travel a lot. I've been to New York, Florida, California, and I can clearly see the difference between West Coast, East Coast, and now the North Coast, or you say Lake Michigan. I think that's where I belong to, the North Coast.
Fantastic. Well, I know many Michiganders from Grand Rapids to Detroit are very thankful that you came and settled in our state. So good luck in your fellowship training and ongoingly with VietMD. We'll look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you very much, Alan. It's my pleasure.
Glad you could come.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. If you're watching on TV, stay tuned in just a moment for our education and humor segments. If you're watching us online, you can find these additional segments on our website under the What's Up and What's So Funny sections. Stay healthy, my friends. Light travels faster than sound. This is why some people appear bright until you hear them speak.